I love this idea of I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more. From this standpoint, and it so perfectly ties into what we're going to be talking about today, is that how interesting is it that I don't know about you, but from my fundamental background, this idea of actually thinking about or literally asking for more was a no-no. Anybody have that experience and they're bringing up and they're growing up and everything? Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Did you know that in the Bible, there's at least 17 different stories about how there was a situation where there's a lack? There's not enough food, there's not enough water, there's not enough money, whatever it is, right? And someone turns to God or somebody does something, like in the case where Jesus fed the 5,000 and he takes the fishes and he takes the bread and he holds them up to heaven. And then all of a sudden, poof, whatever there wasn't enough of shows up in spades. So in other words, this same situation happens at least 17 different times in the Bible, right? Whether it's that story or the story that I've been sharing with you the last couple of weeks about the lady and the oil and how the oil just kept going to fill up the lanterns, right? Regardless of what the situation is, there's always a demonstration that happens, always. And in other words, whatever is asked for is prayed for, it basically shows up every single time. I don't know about you, I never read any stories in the Bible where they asked and it didn't show up. Did I miss something? Did I forget something or overlook something? No. It always shows up. And as I think about it, I think of my own life in the hundreds, I'm going to say thousands. All right, it's thousands of times when I prayed and I asked for something and it didn't show up. That happened to anybody else here? Anybody? And okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one, right? And yet, when I think about it, and as I understand, and as I start to go deeper into my own spiritual journey, my own understanding, the issue has got nothing to do with God. I am convinced. The issue has absolutely nothing to do with God, because that's not the way it works. It's really not the way that it works. God doesn't say no. It's because most of the time the issue comes down to my own inability to receive what God is openly giving. So in other words, it's not God, it's me. And that's what I've realized. Clearly, in all of the demonstrations, the supply was always there. It never didn't show up. It was always there. So then you got to be going like, well, wait a minute. How come they always ask for it and they get it, but I don't? What's going on with that? And that's when I really started to do a deep dive into this stuff. And that's what I want to talk about today. So one of my all-time favorite authors, one of my all-time favorite books is a book called God Never Fails by Mary, and I'm going to screw up her last name. I think it's Cupperfly is how it's pronounced, but I could be mispronouncing it. But it is literally one of my all-time favorite books. It's really, really, really small, and it's really, really, really good. And what she says is, all that we desire, all that we can ever envision or hope to attain is already provided for us. It's already available and will ever be awaiting our acceptance. Our acceptance. So in other words, what she's really saying is that whatever we want, it's already provided for us. Really? That's really the case. That's really what she's saying. Yes, that's exactly what she's saying. And then the only thing that we have to do, which is a huge part of the equation, is accept it. That's what she's saying. So, sounds simple, right? Well, just accept it. How hard can it be? Just accept it. God's giving it to you, just accept it, right? But we struggle. We struggle. Why? And as I looked at it and I started to contemplate it, what it came down to me was one word: guilt. Guilt. Why? Well, I don't know, but growing up as a fundamental Christian, we rarely, almost never, talked about receiving. In fact, it was just the opposite of that. We were taught to what? Give, give, give. And in case you didn't know what you should be doing, you should be giving some more. Right? It's give, 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 and give. But we never talk about receiving. In addition, I don't know about you, but in that particular format, I was taught that money was the root of all evil. And so for a while, I felt guilty about actually wanting more money than I had. Even when I was dead broke, I felt bad asking for money, even though I needed it. It was like, what are you doing? And then the other thing I was taught was not to covet. In other words, not to want when somebody else had, right? And because of that, anytime I would see somebody else with something really cool that I thought, wow, that would kind of be cool to have, then what happened was I would start feeling guilty about it for wanting to have something like it. So I believe, as I look at this thought, this idea of coming from this perspective, if you will, that I'm not the only one that grew up feeling guilty for desiring or for asking for what it is that I want. I think guilt is a big part of this process. Anybody else feeling that just maybe a little bit, just a little bit? Yeah. Which, if you really think about it, because if you were brought up in that particular faith, then you would understand this is not in any way, shape, or form what Jesus taught. He did not teach this, right? He explicitly tells people, ask and receive, right? Ask, it'll be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened unto you. Isn't that what Jesus said? If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's what he said. Oh, that's it. This isn't some type of metaphorical charity talk. It's instructions. What's he telling you to do? Ask and receive. Ask and receive. I think for me, I got the first part down in spades. I did. The part that I failed miserably at was receiving. Just think about it for a minute. If receiving was morally suspect, which is what I felt like as a fundamental Christian, I think Jesus picked a really weird way to communicate that, right? Jesus received constantly. And did you notice one thing he never did when he received? He never once apologized for it. That part gets really conveniently ignored in the fundamental space. It does. He receives financial support from followers. He receives hospitality and care. Anytime he traveled, people would take him in. He receives anointing with expensive oil. He receives a ton of stuff. In the Gospel of Luke, it says women financially supported his ministry. He was supported. But yet, I don't remember hearing a sermon about him saying how awkward that is, and you shouldn't be doing this, or I really shouldn't do it. I didn't read about Jesus putting us down some type of a guilt spiral because he was receiving all the stuff that he was being given. I didn't read that. I didn't see it. Maybe that book is absent from the Bible I read. I don't know. But I'm just saying, it's not there. It is absolutely not there. If receiving, honestly, was spiritually corrupting, Jesus missed the memo, or he rejected it, period. He didn't. So getting back to the book, she goes on to say, the Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us. Unless we are able to provide the right consciousness, Spirit cannot make the gift. Well, I don't understand. What she's saying is, you got to have the right consciousness in order to receive, right? She goes on to say, if the consciousness is full of doubt, permeated by anxiety and fear, it's not the kind of consciousness that provides a free channel for the overflowing Christ heritage of goodness. I love that. The free channel of overflowing Christ heritage of goodness. And when I think about that, I think when I was really struggling, was I really a free channel of overflowing Christ heritage of goodness? Probably not. Probably not. Why? Well, because there's a bunch of guilt in there. So the universe is just picking up on my energy going like, well, he's asking for it a whole lot, but man, oh man, he's feeling guilty about receiving it. Guess what? They offset each other. And then all of a sudden, guess what? You don't get to receive it. Why? Well, because I'm walking around feeling guilty about receiving it. Is that really the way it works, Mike? Yes, that's the way it really works. Why? Because your energy. Oh, damn. You mean it comes down to me again? Yep. It comes down to you again. Yeah. So there's a story in the book of John I'm going to share with you. And by the way, for those of you that often wonder, well, Mike, you do a lot of this metaphysical interpretation stuff. This is the New Testament metaphysically interpreted. How about that? Pretty cool. So in the book of John 21, it says, after these things, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself this way. Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and the two others of his disciples were together. And Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. They told him, we're also coming with you. They immediately went out and entered the boat. That night they caught nothing. But when the day had already come, Jesus stood on the beach, yet the disciples didn't know that it was Jesus. Jesus therefore said to them, children, have you anything to eat? I could just see Jesus, because I just think he was sarcastic as hell. I do. He's like, all right, you guys, what do you got? And they're like, who's this guy? Because remember, they don't recognize him. They don't. And they answer to him and they say, no. He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you'll find some. They cast it, therefore, and now they weren't able to draw it in for the multitude of fish. The disciples, therefore, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, it's Jesus. They finally recognized him, right? And so Peter went up, drew the net to the land full of great fish, and I don't know why, but they say 153. Like, who's counting? I'm just curious, who's counting? 153 fish. And even though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and eat breakfast. And that's pretty much it, right? So that's the story. Great. That's cool, Mike. Well, what about that? Well, of course we know, because we know there's got to be a metaphysical interpretation to the story, right? So let's rip into it. So it looks like it's this miracle of multiplication, but actually it's far more. This is actually not about catching fish. It's actually about your consciousness. That's what it's about. The boat in the story is about your mind. The sea is what you've heard me talk about this before, spiritual substance. That's the stuff that things can be formed out of that's everywhere, right? The net is the way we use our thought, our effort, and our awareness. Now remember, are the disciples doing everything that they possibly can to catch fish? Yes, they really are. They're working hard, right? They're skilled at what they do. They're working hard. They're persistent. They're committed. They've been fishing all night, and yet nothing. They've caught nothing, right? Metaphysically, this is a state of consciousness where you're spending a lot of time efforting. But here's the problem. Your consciousness is off. It's off. You can work hard. Anybody here work 80 hours a week trying to do something you're trying to accomplish, or weeks or months or years, and it just not happening? Anybody been there? We all have. We all have. And it's not because of you're not working hard enough. It's not. It's because your consciousness is off. It's not because of the lack of supply. The problem in the story is where the disciples' consciousness was during their cast. They're fishing, or they're using their mindset, strain, struggle, and a little bit of guilt, right? When Jesus says you're fishing on the wrong side of the boat, what that metaphysically means is, hey, your thinking's off. You got to think differently. Think differently. Notice what Jesus doesn't say. Jesus doesn't say, well, try harder. He doesn't say, get a better net. He doesn't say, you're broke. He doesn't say any of that. That's not what he says. He essentially says, you're working from the wrong consciousness. Change your consciousness. Throw it on the other side. In metaphysics, the right side represents spiritual understanding, aligned with your divine mind, and then being receptive, open and receptive. That's what we're talking about here, right? Notice the shift is not external. Jesus isn't saying, go do more, work harder. He's not saying that. It's an internal adjustment that we're talking about. Same boat, same sea, same net, different consciousness. Notice in the story something very critical. They don't go to a new location. They don't change any of their tools. They don't work harder. They don't do any of that. They simply shift their perspective to the right side of the boat, right? And that shift went from work harder to receive what is already there, but do it without guilt. Open up and receive. And unity certainly teaches us that abundance is not created, it's actually revealed. We think it's all up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us. We have to make this happen. And that's one way we can do it, right? That's when we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to make everything happen. But there's another way. What is it? Learn how to receive. Learn how to receive, right? So the fish were always there. It's not that the fish weren't there. The abundance was always present. The only thing that was missing in the story was their consciousness. That was it. In her book, she goes on to say, there's something we can do, however, to provide the right kind of consciousness, the receiving consciousness. And I really want to talk about that for a minute, because she goes on to explain, well, what is it? How do we get this thing called a receiving consciousness? What are you talking about, Mike? This process begins with the letting go of all preconceived thoughts in favor of letting God. Notice who's not doing it in the sentence. Us. What are we doing? We're letting God reform, reshape, and remold our consciousness according to God's divine plan. Oh, you mean I'm not doing this alone? No, you're not doing it alone. You mean I don't have to sit there and bang my head up against the wall to make this stuff work all by myself and do 4,000 million affirmations to make it work? No, you don't. You mean I can lean on my own divinity and ask God to give me a hand? Yes, you can. You don't have to. Nobody is going to force you to do this. Nobody is going to force you to do it. That's not the way it works, right? Let God reform, reshape, and remold our consciousness. In other words, get out of the way. Tell your ego to shut up and create some space for God. That's what this is about, right? She goes on to say, it continues with our willingness to become open and receptive to the divine inner power that is above and beyond our human understanding. Open and receptive. Open and receptive. Open and receptive. Now, I don't know about you, but when I've struggled in life, when I was really struggling, and it didn't matter what, you name it, I've gone through it and struggled with it. It didn't matter, but what was happening was, do you think I was open and receptive, really open and receptive to receive help from God? Just being honest. I was trying, but the guilt was there. So there was this conflict going on. And there we go. Be open and receptive to the divine inner power that is above and beyond our human understanding. It's our part to cultivate and present the constant receiving consciousness. Folks, this doesn't happen overnight. This idea of a receiving consciousness doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, especially for some of us that came through a background that said, not cool for you to be asking for stuff. Not cool. Because then all of a sudden you're like, well, isn't that not cool? But that's what we do, right? Learn to be a good receiver. Take time every day quietly to let God give to you. Oh, there's a sweet spot, folks. That's a sweet spot right there. And I just want you to feel that for a minute. Can you, and I'm going to ask you in your heart, can you really let God give to you? Can you really? I'm just sharing with you, for me, that was not easy. That was not easy. And it took a lot of time for me to be able to open myself up to allow God to give to me. But I love this idea. I love this thought of learn to be a good receiver. Take time every day. Notice it doesn't say every once in a great while. It says every day. Take time to let God give to you. It is not selfish. It is not ego. It's nothing. It's just that you're a child of God, and God's greatest joy is to give to you. But we struggle believing that. We really, really do, right? So let's bring this home. For many of us, the real struggle around receiving has never been about money. It's never been about help. It's never been about love or opportunity. It's often because of guilt. And somewhere along the way, we learn to associate receiving with selfishness or weakness or unworthiness. We learn to give generously, serve faithfully, and show up consistently. But when something came towards us, often there would be a hesitation. I don't know if I can do this. We question it, we downplay it, and we felt like we needed, in some cases, to earn it. right? But guilt was never part of Jesus' teachings. He never said, ask but feel bad about it. That's not it. He never said receive, but only if you suffered enough. That was not it. He never shamed people for being healed, supported, fed, or blessed, ever. He simply said, ask and receive. In Luke, he says, don't be afraid, little flock, for it's God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. That's the line. A few things worthy of noticing in those lines. Don't be afraid. Fear and guilt often travel together. They do. Jesus names fear first because it's usually the root of it. Good pleasure. That's not obligation. That's not reluctance. It's not after you've earned it. Pleasure, desire, willingness to receive. He goes on to say to give, not to test you, not to withhold, not to see if you're humble enough to refuse it. And then he says, the kingdom, that isn't a little bit. He's talking about the entire kingdom of God he's willing to give to you, to each and every one of us. Not scraps, not survival, not barely enough. The kingdom. That's amazing. A state of consciousness, belonging. It's about wholeness. Jesus never, ever, ever frames God as this tight-fisted accountant, ever. That's just not what he did. He frames God as a willing giver, which means this, that if guilt shows up when you're receiving it, it ain't coming from God and it ain't coming from Jesus. It's not. It came later, usually from some type of old, outdated, fear-based theology that we were brought up with, and a control system that confuses suffering with holiness. Now, what Jesus taught us over and over again, trust in God, trust in the supply, trust in love that flows, not in love that keeps score. Let go of it. That's old. It doesn't serve us anymore. And that brings us to the invitation before us. And that is unity always teaches that consciousness precedes our experience. Always. Always. And if that's true, then perhaps the work isn't about getting more or proving more or striving harder. Perhaps the work is about developing what we might call a receiving consciousness, a consciousness that's open, it's willing, and that allows good to arrive without any apology or any guilt. Receive without guilt, folks. Receive without guilt. It's not taking more than your share. That's not what it's about. It's about allowing life to circulate as it was always meant to. That's nature. That's normal. And when it's not happening, then something is off. When we receive fully, we allow the energy to flow. And when we participate, we discover a simple truth that grace, prosperity, love was never something we had to earn. It was always something we were simply meant to accept and to receive. And so, your homework assignment, should you choose to accept it, consider adding a receiving routine. Remember, she said, practice it how often? Every day. Maybe something to consider. Having said that, I love you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm grateful to see each and every one of you here. It's so fun to feel your energy. It's so fun to be up here. I hope to goodness that you can feel the energy that goes on in this place. It's pretty incredible. I'm spoiled because I get to sit up here and feel it, but I'm just telling you, if you can just tap into it, it's freaking awesome. And the reason it's awesome is because you're awesome. You're amazing. You're a beautiful light of God. And we are really, really glad that you're here, and we're really lucky and we're really blessed to have you here. And we invite you in to come join us because this is one hell of a party. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day and come back and see us again soon. God bless. Namaste and Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.